celebrating Theresa's life. Restrooms are out in the lobby to my left, your right. And after the service, the family extends an invitation to Owen and Diana's home for a reception. So let's begin remembering and celebrating her life by asking God to be with us. Will you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for allowing us to honor Theresa's legacy, and she has left a very impressive one, Lord, with your help. But Lord, honestly, we don't want to be here. We would rather not deal with death and understanding things about what happens after we pass. But Lord, you gave us this time, and so we're going to take it, and we're going to honor you. So be with us right now, in Jesus' name, amen. For those of you that picked up the flyer that is in memory of Theresa, on the back, I just wanted to read the obituary that Theresa was born on June 26, 1934, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to William and Florence McGivney. She went to live at St. Vincent's Orphanage at the age of 5, along with her 3 siblings. She left the orphanage at the age of 14 to go live in California with her mother. She met her great love, Frank Sly McGarry, on New Year's Eve in 1956, and he later became her husband. They had 2 children, Owen and Colleen, and lived in Whittier, Palm Desert, and San Bernardino. And through the years, Theresa worked as a grocery checker and in her husband's insurance company. She spent her free time with her family, helping out as a Cub Scout den leader, a Girl Scout leader, and a teen mom. She and Frank enjoyed many happy years as parents and grandparents until his passing in 1989. They have 6 grandchildren: Mary Therese, who died in 1991, Brian, Frank, Miranda, Ethan, and Elena, and 1 great-grandchild, Asher. Theresa married her second husband, Robert, and lived happily with him until his passing in 2017. Theresa was loved by many and had many friends, and will always be remembered for her beautiful smile and her love for her family. I realize that's so short. How do you reduce a person's life down to a couple of paragraphs? You can't. But today we hope to expand our knowledge a little bit more about Theresa's life from the words from her family and some pictures that we'll see together. So we begin by putting that personal touch on her life, and a few family members wish to come and share their memories. And so I'd like to invite up Frank and his siblings to share with us, and then followed by Owen. Would you come share?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. It means a lot to all of us. It's very nice to know that our grandmother was loved by so many people. It's kind of hard to describe how much our grandmother meant to us in words only, but we're going to go ahead and try. I never met anybody in my entire life who cared as much about her family as our grandmother did care about us. Telling us stories of when she was young, the only thing she ever wanted to be was a mother, and she was a great mother to my father and my aunt, and she was a great grandmother. From the first day of our lives, she was always there. She was there when we were born, any family event we had, whether that be a track meet, graduation, baseball game, soccer game. I know there were a lot of soccer games. She was always there. And it's kind of interesting, we're preparing for this funeral, and it still hasn't really hit that she's left us. But we're almost kind of expecting to see her today, how great all of us are doing. And although it's sad that she's not with us anymore, we are comforted in the fact that we know that she's with the Lord right now, and she's with so many family members who have come before. All of her siblings she's reunited with. Our grandfather she's reunited with. I know she's missed him terribly since he passed away. So we're very comforted in that, and there's no doubt in my mind that she's looking down on us right now from heaven. And then I'd also like to talk about what I admired most about my grandmother, and that was just her positivity. I don't think anybody will disagree with me when I say that she was probably one of the happiest and most positive people I've ever known. And having the kind of childhood that she had, she would have every excuse to be the most bitter, angry person that you would know. and she was the exact opposite. Um, Anyone here will tell you she always saw the good in anything and anybody. Just always so positive, and that's something that I wish, or that I hope to replicate in my life. And if more people in the world did that, I think the world would be a much better place. Um, Never heard her say anything negative really about anybody, which um, is pretty rare. And then she was always our biggest fan. I knew if I did anything, she would always be there to support me. I don't know if you know this, but apparently I'm the most handsome, talented, and amazing person to ever live. At least according to her, I was. I don't know about all that, but I'm not going to stand up here and call her a liar. So we'll go with that. But she was always bragging about us. Any of our friends that we introduced her to, they instantly loved her. I don't think there was a single person out there who didn't like her. And we missed her terribly, and we're saddened that we're not going to get to hear her stories anymore of when she was young, growing up in the orphanage, stories of how much of a troublemaker our dad was when he was a kid, and how much of an angel Colleen was all the time. Or getting a text from Grandma. I know when she was living up in Oregon, she would text me all the time about the deer and feeding the deer and how much she loved it. And then when she discovered what emojis were, she loved emojis. If you ever got a text from her, had about 20 of those in there. That was always fun. But there's so much more about my grandmother that I admire, but I'd also like to give my siblings a chance to share some stories, memories that they have of Grandma.
I can go first. Well, the first one that came to mind, if you knew her, she could not swim, and she was terrified of water. But one time she was babysitting me, and I really wanted to go swimming. It was just me and her, so I made her put a bathing suit on, come in the pool with me, and we had such a fun time, even though she was probably terrified. But yeah, that's like one of my favorite.
Just probably one of the first memories I could think of, and I think today just reminded me of it. When I was in my undergrad at Laverne, she was living in Claremont, so we were really close by, and I would frequently take her to grocery trips and errands here and there, and we'd go to lunch. If you ever saw her pantry, then you know she could tear it up in Trader Joe's. So we were always going to Trader Joe's, and I remember one day before the grocery store, we got lunch, and we were just, it was a bakery connected to a sandwich shop, so she would get a little pastry, I would have a sandwich, and we'd eat it together. And another older woman came up to us, and she just asked if I was her granddaughter, and I said yes, and she told me that when she was younger, she would always, her and her grandmother would have coffee and pastries, and she said that it was one of the best memories she had. So I thought that was really special. That lady shared that with me, and I just looked at my grandma, and she was just smiling at me, and I knew that this was about like 4 years ago, so I knew when that lady had shared that with me, I knew our time was limited, but really ever since then, I really, every time I got to take her to the store or pick up a medication, I really didn't take it for granted, and I cherished every moment that I got to spend with her, and I can credit a lot of that to that interaction that I had on one of our little days out.
A memory that sticks out to me is throughout my life, she was probably one of my biggest supporters, and same with the rest of my siblings. And she always had such good optimism about anything that you had. Like, she loved hearing about what I had going on in my life and my future. And she always gave me hope and support for what I was doing. And guidance to what I would do. And I really loved that about her.
once again, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And there's a lot of family here that we haven't seen in a long time. It's really great to see you guys. While they were telling their stories, I was reminded one thing that me and my grandmother used to do when I was really small. This is probably 20 years ago. By our house, there's a strawberry field there. And when I was a kid, I loved strawberries. I would eat them until I would turn red. And she knew that, so every time she'd come over, she'd bring a thing of strawberries, and then we had this little red wagon that she would pull me in. And one time she took me over to the strawberry farm and asked the worker there if she could take me back there so I could look at it. And 5-year-old me got a real kick out of that. Like I said, we're gonna miss her, but we are comforted that she's not in any pain, and she's with the Lord right now. So that's the most comforting thing of all. So thank you.
I don't get to see anybody out there. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan McGivney. I'm Owen and Colleen's cousin. Theresa was my aunt and the sister of my father, of which my father, Aunt Theresa, and Aunt Pat, another sister, were the three that were at the orphanage. So they grew up very close and basically stayed in touch with each other throughout their lives, and our families were all very close. Coming up after Frank, I'll hand it to him. He did a great job. There's a lot of things that he mentioned are true. My aunt always smiled, was always happy. There's things that happen in our world that are tough, and she had tough things in her life, as Frank mentioned. And life always has its little times. You get angry, you get down in the dumps, whatever. But she always would have a smile on her face. She was incredibly happy to see people. And with regard to the family, it was a large family. There was 10 siblings altogether, and she was the hub. She was like the old-fashioned, what are they called, the telegraph or whatever, the person who was at the switchboard operator. Yeah, I mean, the people came in to her. They'd call her. To get a hold of somebody else. They'd meet at her house. They just filtered through and she was the hub. She's what kept everybody in contact and together. So it was a wonderful thing. She cared a lot about people. She loved life, as Frank said. She loved people, loved her family, loved to have people over, and it was just a lot of fun. She was someone that, even though maybe she wouldn't swim, she did get in the pool, right? And she's willing to go anywhere and do anything. She might stand by and watch, but she was willing. She was all for going places and doing stuff. She did have a great life. 91, past 91 actually. I think all but 2 of her siblings are gone before her, so that was tougher, I think. And I think she loved to be around people, so living by herself a little bit was kind of tough too, and stuff. So all of us in the family really love her. She kept us together. She acted like a grandmother to my children who lost their grandparents at a younger age. So that was really nice that she had that. They would kind of filter in and out to go visit her, call her on the phone and stuff. So she was a wonderful lady, and she will be missed. And she's one of the great ones. I mean, they don't make them like they used to. You can say times are tough now, times were tough then, times were tough for everybody at every generation. But when you grow up in an orphanage, and at the age of 14, which is when you graduate from 8th grade, they open the door and say, "There's the world." And a city like Philadelphia, that's a tough spot to be in. So the mere fact that they stayed together and were able to hook back up with their mother and their other siblings and become the the people they were to raise families and good families and stuff. So it was tough, and for her to keep the outlook on life that she had and keep her faith, which was very important to her, was amazing. So we'll all miss her, and again, as Frank said, she's with the Lord and in a best place for her. So thank you.
Again, I would like to thank everybody for coming to honor my mother. Um, as it was mentioned before, my mom was born June 26, 1934 in Philadelphia. At the age of 5, it was actually my Uncle Bill, my Uncle Ron, my Aunt Pat, and my mom were sent to the orphanage. And my Uncle Bill, he was already at the end of the amount of time you were allowed to be there. He was almost 14, so without permission, he left. Which was kind of like he used to behave most of his life. He kind of was his own man and did his own thing. But the core was my Uncle Ron, my Aunt Pat, and my mom. And they were protected there. They got a first-class education there. There were like 300 kids there. The nuns that were there that were raising them did the absolute best they could to share love and stuff with them, but they were very strict. And cleanliness and education was the most important thing that they were interested in at that place. And I remember my Uncle Ron saying, and my mom, they didn't like the food. It was almost all German food. It was an orphanage created in 1854 by German Americans. So most of the children that were there were of German ancestry, so they were used to that type of food, but my family members were not. One of the fun things was I got to go there twice in my life. Once when the orphanage was still intact before they had the fire in the boys' dormitory and the church burnt down. And then again on the 150th anniversary, Diana and I and Frank and Miranda got to go there. And my mom felt so blessed to be there to see her grandchildren play on the same playground that she played in as a child. She was just absolutely thrilled. My Aunt Pat shared a story of when they first went there. When she was 5, my aunt was 6. My mom kept asking her, when is Mommy coming to get us? Where's Mommy? And it was just, but that was where the bond between, because they shared beds right next to each other. They shared a locker together, which caused an awful lot of arguments and stuff. So one would keep it clean, one would make it messy, and they'd start arguing and fighting. But the two sisters were extremely close. And my mom's big hero at that time was her brother Ron. And the person that kept the glue of the family together was our Aunt Mag. Several times people would come and try to adopt my mother, and she absolutely refused, would not allow it to happen, because she had promised her niece, my Grandma Shaw, that she would keep them together as a family. She would come and take them on weekends and holidays. She would have them over the summer. And she told stories of my Uncle Ron was very daring and would take risks, and they would go up on the roof. You've seen the place where they lived, where Aunt Mag lived. They would jump roof to roof. There was, if you missed, you went. And Aunt Pat wouldn't do that, but my mom would. She was very daring. Like Danny said, she may not totally get involved in everything, but she was there. If something happened that wasn't exactly good, she would never say a word. She would just keep it quiet. But one thing I can say is that all in all, her experience at the orphanage left her a stronger woman and gave her a first-class Catholic education. She excelled at sports, running and softball. She loved games her entire life, and my mother was very competitive. She loved seeing her granddaughters run track, play soccer. She lived for those games for Miranda at Laverne. She really enjoyed those, and she enjoyed watching the boys compete in cross country and track. She came to each of my son's Eagle Scout Courts of Honor. She would never miss that. Um, my mother loved candy and cakes. She loved anything sweet. I mean, I think I got that from her. Not the cakes, but I love candy. Upon she was kind of sad at the orphanage because her brother Ron graduated first. He was still in Philadelphia, but he was going to high school living with Aunt May. And then her sister Pat graduated and left. And then she would see them once in a while on a weekend or a holiday. And so that was tough for her because they were so close. Then she graduated, and my aunt came and got her and put her on a train. And she was going out to California to meet her mother. She had seen Grandma Shaw a few times when she was younger, but not very often. Her father once in a while. And one thing I would like to say is that orphanage was not a true orphanage. When I went back and met her friends that were there with her, my Uncle Ron, they all called it the dump because every kid that was there really had parents, but for some reason they couldn't cope, they couldn't handle it, so they would leave the children. So amongst the boys and the girls at the place, it had the nickname the dump. So she was leaving, and she went to California, and she met her brother Joe, who she hadn't seen in many, many years. And that train ride was epic. He immediately asked her, "Where's the money?" And she says, "What money?" And he said a cuss word to her, which she had never heard in her life. And he took the money and left her moneyless. So she went and found a conductor and told on him. And so he spent the rest of the trip from Philadelphia to LA in the baggage car. And so they were reunited in Long Beach with their mother. I mean, in LA, and she took him down to Long Beach. One of the first things she did was she bought my mother a taco. My mother had never had Mexican food. She had no idea what a taco was, but I can tell you this, it was love at first bite. She loved tacos, one of my favorite foods in the entire world. And she wanted nothing more than to have a relationship with her mother, who we called Grandma Shaw. She had discovered that she had 4 more brothers and sisters, Aunt Ellen and Uncle Ellie, Aunt Carolyn, and Uncle John. I spoke to Uncle John. He's in poor health, and so is Aunt Carolyn. And so they weren't able to make it, but he sent his love. And as Danny said, the switchboard, she still talked to them. She was still speaking to both of them. So she was always in contact with everybody in the family. And there's a remembrance I have of her with her siblings at Danny's house. They were all out on the patio, and Uncle Ellie was there, and they hadn't seen each other for years, but it was like old times. You could just tell that the family was important to them. From my mom, I learned how to pray, my love of God, and patriotism. I learned to love my country first through her, with her telling me stories of her brother Bill, who served in World War II, her brother Ron, who served in Korea, our cousins, Joe and Ellie, Lloyd, who served in Vietnam. And love of country and love of God is something that runs deep in our family. And I learned this first from her. My father would add to that. My father was a great love of family, had a great love of family also. So whenever my uncles, my aunts, anybody showed up, he was all in favor of that. And all of us kids, the cousins, when we got together, we had a wonderful time just having a great time running in and out and causing all kinds of mischief and just a lot of fun. But my mom, to me, was a very loving and kind woman. Always believed in me, believed in my sister. She shared love with everyone. And my house in the neighborhood I grew up in, Whittier, all of my friends were there all the time. Everybody was like, everyone came there before we decided to go and do whatever we were going to do for the day or the week in the summertime. And my mom was a true host. What would you like to drink? You know, she would give us something to drink. Are you hungry? She would give us something to eat. She was just a wonderful woman. She would try to discipline me. My father was the one that did the discipline, and so she disciplined me one time, and I was crushed. And I went and told her, I said, "Why did you spank me? Because you deserved it." I go, no, you're not supposed to do that. Dad's supposed to do that. You're supposed to be the nice one. So she never did it again, but she would rat me out to my father. No problem. So when she comes to Long Beach, her her stepfather was in the Air Force, and they were living at government housing there. She first went to St. Anthony's, and then he passed away in an accident in the Air Force. So they had to go to Hawaiian Gardens. So she went to high school at Excelsior High for a year. And then my grandmother told her she was sorry, but she had to go to work. So at 15, she knew nothing about getting a job or whatever. But my mom, that never deterred her. If she didn't know about it, she was going to plunge in head first. So she put on some makeup, as she told me, not very good, and went down and asked for a job. And the guy says, sure. So she was 15. She wasn't 16 yet. So she worked there for 4 years, and at 19, she heard about a job in Los Angeles at Allstate Insurance. So she went down, as she put it, took the test, the entrance exam. She failed. They asked her, do you have a high school diploma? She said, of course. She didn't, because she figured she needed that job. So anyhow, the guy goes, well, you didn't pass the test, but I need someone really bad, and so I'm going to hire you. And she started as a file clerk. And in 4 years, she was a junior underwriter. And he told her when she left to go marry my father that these tests that we give people before they come in, they're no good, because the test said that you wouldn't have been a good hire, but you were the best worker I ever had. And wherever my mom worked, she was the best worker wherever she was. And you could see her personality and her love. As a grocery checker, we couldn't go anywhere in Whittier. Like if we went to Jack's Salad Bowl to eat or something, half the neighborhood was in there that went to the market where she worked at Lucky's. And it was like, everybody would come by and want to talk to her at the table while we were eating dinner. She made an impression wherever she went. She made sure that my sister and I would do our work in school to the best of our ability. She loved camping. She loved being with her brother Ron and our sister Pat. We went to the river many, many times, and if you saw them together, my Uncle Ron and my aunt and my mom, you could tell there was a special bond there. That when my dad passed away, she sold her home and she moved to Hemet because she wanted to be with her brother. And when he passed on, that was a really hard blow for her. But as she started to get older, the one thing that I didn't realize exactly how close she was to my aunt Pat, they talked all the time. I didn't know they were on the phone all the time. They would see each other, but when her funeral came, when she died, my mother, something inside of her started to go down. I remember her lingering by the coffin there. She didn't want to leave, and it just hit her hard. I remember Diane and I took her to the hospital when she was suffering from pneumonia, and she sat there and prayed. She didn't want to leave. That bond that occurred there from the orphanage lasted their entire life. My dad was definitely the love of her life. My Aunt Florence was the one that brought that about. She had been trying to get my mom to meet my father for many years, and she didn't want to because she had heard he was divorced, and she didn't want to. She was a Catholic. She didn't want to marry a divorced man, so she was at and he had a child. So she's at a New Year's Eve party, and she came with a date, and she came out and asked my aunt, who's that wonderful man in there? He's so funny, and who is he? And she goes, that's Frank. That's the man I'm trying to introduce you to. She goes, oh, I want to meet him. So my dad came with a date, and they left together, and their dates were, so it was, you know, when God's timing is right, it's right. So they were married in 58. I was born in September. My dad was still in the Air Force. It was a happy home. I can say Colleen and I had a wonderful childhood. She was involved in everything. If we wanted to go to play tennis, and we lived in North Whittier, so before we knew about going up to the college at Rio Hondo, she would take us over to Whittier High School to play tennis. It didn't matter. Wherever, if we wanted to go here or there, my mom was the taxi for the entire neighborhood. Bowling. We want to go bowling. So she would drive us for bowling, leave us there the entire day. It was a great time. Can't do that anymore, but we would spend the entire day there. But my mom was like a mother to all the other boys and girls in the neighborhood. Parties, she would have birthday parties and have a great time. And she was just a lovely, wonderful lady. Many good times with her on vacation and the family. My mom was just a genuinely happy person, always laughing. Even when I was sick going through cancer, it hit her hard, but she still kept a very positive, upbeat. Um, that really tested her faith when her granddaughter, Mary Theresa, died. That was a very hard blow to my sister and also to my mom, but she just kept on chugging, she kept on going, and I'm gonna miss her. I'm kind of a private person, I don't really weep in public or whatever, but definitely she was, before I met my wife, the love of my life, my mother. I had a fantastic mom. I mean, just a wonderful mother. If I may, I would just like to share a scripture with you that I think sums this up, because my mom is in heaven, which gives me, when my dad died, I knew he was saved. I didn't grieve that much. And the same with my mom. They've already, when you read in Revelation, and Christ is on the throne and you see the elders around, she's already seen all of that. She's seen the streets of gold. So it's 2 Corinthians 5:21. He made him, that's Jesus, who knew no sin, to be sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God. So, just to explain this, God made Jesus sin. What do I mean by Jesus becoming sin? Only in one sense. He treated him as if he committed every sin, though he in fact never committed any sins. Hanging on the cross, he was holy, harmless, undefiled. Hanging on the cross, he was spotless lamb. He was never for a split second a sinner. He is holy God on the cross, but God is treating him, to put it more practically, he treated Jesus as if he lived my life. And God punished him for my sins, own sins, and turns right around and treats me as the life he lived. So God sees, when you believe in the gospel, Christ became sin, and God looks at us and sees Jesus. It's only through that grace and that mercy of the blood of Jesus Christ that we're saved. I hope that gives you solace and happiness. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank my wife Diana for all the tremendous work and everything that she did. That night, I just want you to know that my mom didn't suffer. She was surrounded by her family, her grandchildren. And as the doctor had told Colleen and I, that because of her heart, when the time would come, it would just come, very quickly and gradually. So she was talking to us, and she went to sleep, and she woke up in heaven. So, thank you.
Thanks to everyone who shared. You guys are amazing, and thanks for that. Oh, and I know you and I have been friends for many years, and I just wish I could have known Theresa and experienced that same thing, but what a comfort for all of us. Now, I know some of you have examples that you might want to share as well, and we wanted to take some time out of this service to allow you an opportunity to share a little bit about your memories and things that are exciting that you've experienced, maybe a funny moment, something touching. So I invite you to share. So if you would raise your hand, I have a gentleman in the back who's going to be coming around with a microphone. We're recording this for the family, and so we want to make sure that gets recorded as well. So tell us who you are, how you know Theresa, and briefly share so others might have a chance to speak. So who would like to be first? That's always the big one. Just raise your hand. Young lady up in the front, right here. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Someone else? Over here.
Well, I'm a niece to my Aunt Theresa, and she was one of the most spectacular people in the world. I loved how Owen always said, like, she always had a smile on her face, always a kind word. When I was going through some of the biggest struggles of my life, I would just drop at her house, and her and Uncle Frank would take me to dinner and just share small words of wisdom. Nothing like no sermons, nothing, just a word of wisdom that would impact you. And she just had, I remember one time, like, Mom and Dad, it must have been around St. Patrick's Day, because Dad put on his St. Patrick's Day music, and Aunt Theresa and Aunt Florence were there. And us kids got sent to bed, and I went and stood in the hallway, standing there looking, and they're all just dancing and having the best time. They truly loved each other. They were the biggest example of what family really is. And from a woman that has 17 grandkids that I adore, I know that all of you guys, I mean, she talked about you guys all the time when I would see her. And I wish I could have spent more time with her. But I know that that she loved you, because, you know, I'm not your grandmother, but with my grandkids, they are the best thing. I mean, we love our kids, but our grandkids are everything. And Owen and Colleen, I love, one of my favorite times for going to the house and spending time with you guys, and Aunt Theresa, and she would always call us kiddo, even as adults. And it was endearing. It was just like, I don't know, it's just, Colleen kind of still has that little thing. She'll call me kiddo or kid. How you doing, kid? It's like, oh my gosh, she gets that from her mother, you know. But they truly did have one of the best moms that was possible. And you guys are blessed. And I pray that that you as brothers and sisters will just be strong and love each other and share memories with one another and celebrate the heritage that you guys were given. And Brian, I know that maybe you weren't didn't get to be around them maybe quite as much, but she loved you too. She had great conversation with me about you, and so I just want you to know that you were so loved by her. And all of you, family is everything to our parents, and you guys are all great examples of what that is. Your families are beautiful, and I will always treasure your mom my whole life.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean, great nephew, and Dan's son. Just wanted to highlight a couple things about Aunt Theresa, and I think for context, to make this more applicable to what I'll be saying, I'm in the Army, so this is two things about her that really just stand out to me are really these epitome of like qualities you want in a soldier, right? And it's like number one, her ability to endure was incredible. I know Frank talked about it, but you listen to the stories she would tell and the things that her and her siblings just fought through. And absolutely enlightening to see someone push through so much toughness and be able to stand there and talk to you about it with so much just grace and faith in God and love for everyone that was part of that journey. And then secondly, she irradiated just pure, raw joy. And it was infectious. It touched everyone around you and lifted everyone up. And I see that in all of you guys, all 5 of her grandchildren. It's incredible. And, you know, these are just things that make an incredible teammate and something that I've grown to appreciate so much being in the Army. And then lastly, my dad always says this about Ron, but I just know that her, Pat, and Ron are up there doing an Irish jig.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael. I'm stand up. Dan's other son, and Aunt Teresa's my great aunt. I echo everything that everybody said. Visiting with Aunt Teresa is the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think of her. Sitting and talking with her just feels like coming home. It was just like that same level of comforting encouraging and easy experience. She just made anyone she talked to, I think, feel that way. But I just quickly want to share two of my funniest memories of Aunt Theresa. One of them is that I called her on a drive home one time, as I did occasionally, and I asked her what she was doing, and this is when she lived in her little apartment up in Claremont. And she told me, oh, I'm just having a little beer, watching TV. And sometimes when I'd go over there, she had these little, like, 8 or 10 ounce beers that she'd keep in the fridge. And I just thought it was the most unexpected thing. I never thought I would hear that come out of her mouth. But that's exactly what she was doing, and it just put a smile on my face, and I love thinking about that. Like, even when she's sitting at home by herself, she still knew how to enjoy the little things. And the other thing was, as my dad mentioned, we lost all of my grandparents when I was fairly young, kind of in like elementary, middle school. And so Aunt Theresa was the closest thing I had to a grandparent at my wedding. And I can still picture so clearly like the moment I got to share with her, 89 years old, tearing it up on the dance floor, and just having the best time of her life celebrating our wedding. And that's something I will forever cherish. So thank you, Aunt Theresa.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that.
And I'm the mother of those two, and our daughter is not able to be here. She also was in the Army and couldn't get away. But she and Aunt Theresa had a special relationship as well. I've been a part of this. Okay, so I guess our daughter sent a message, and she said she was a bright light, especially when she spoke about life, recognizing each and every blessing, cherishing every moment, and finding opportunity in everyday encounters. She had a sharp mind, a kind heart, and a great sense of humor. Absolutely. She liked a little beer here or there, or a bit of Irish whiskey every now and again, an ode to her Irish heritage. But I've known Aunt Theresa, gosh, I think since about 1985, so it's been a very long time. And when you marry an individual, you marry a family. We all know this, and there's sometimes challenges that happen here and there. And I used to joke, I mean, I was blessed to have a great relationship with all of my in-laws. I've developed wonderful relationships with my sister-in-laws. And I used to joke early on that Aunt Theresa was what made all the in-laws worthwhile. I would take her any day of the week. She was such a joy to be with, and we were so blessed to take a few trips together and just spend, very relaxing family time. She valued family so much, and I know our kids just adored her, and they did, especially our daughter. She was, I think in 4th grade, they lost all 4 grandparents in 3.5 years, and thank God Aunt Theresa was able to step into that role and help them recognize that relationship. So Aunt Theresa's a gem. Love her dearly. We'll miss her terribly, but we'll never forget her smile, her laugh, and just the joy she brought to every person she ever met. So thank you. Hannah loved Aunt Theresa just as much, but a little bit emotional.
Thanks, Hannah, for sharing. Appreciate that. Ma'am?
My name is Mona Marie, and I was Teresa's neighbor and friend. And when I met her, I felt like I've known her all my life. She reminded me of my father. They had the same kind of personality that everybody loved. And so being around Theresa was kind of like being with Dad. He had passed on. And I had knee surgery, and she was there at my door bringing me ice with another neighbor. And I just couldn't get over how she is just the epitome of a charitable giver, even if she was in pain or she was suffering. And as I got to know her more and more, I started seeing more qualities, virtues that she had truly from the Holy Spirit. And I just really thanked God for her, because I was going through some health issues and some really challenging times. And out of the place that I lived, she was the one that was the real deal. She was sincere, and I could trust her. And we would have really deep talks, and most of the time, they inspired me so much, especially when she talked about her children. She was so proud of Colleen and her son and all the challenges when he was going through cancer. And she taught me so much, just how she dealt with it and how she looked at the positive side. The glass was always half full in every circumstance. And when I would come to her and talk to her, she would also say, hey, kiddo, there's other things, and it put me back into the reality of it wasn't as bad as was what I thought. I love cooking and baking, so I never knew how to cook just for one, and so I loved sharing the things that I baked and cooked. But Theresa, every time I would bring her, she would just open her arms and hug me and squeeze me so tight because she just couldn't wait to eat it, and she was just so grateful. Everything that she did, it was in an excellent form. So she was my inspiration, and when I saw the apartment empty, I was telling Colleen, my heart broke because I knew she wasn't in there. And I just thought she moved. Until I talked to someone and they told me she had passed. To this day, I'm still grieving. But I'm holding on because I know she would want me to continue to fight the good fight and be an inspiration to others and be helpful to others, no matter if they betray you, no matter how hard circumstances can be. Theresa rose above it. And we had some talks out on her patio, and I would ask her for her gems and her pearls. But Theresa, why would they do that? What do they have to gain? And she said, honey, it doesn't matter. That's just the way the world is. And so the lessons that I learned, I will always cherish. And I'm so grateful to God that I'm grateful to God that He created her. And everybody else here is too. And it's just a wonderful blessing to come to a memorial service where you get people talking about how she touched their hearts. And I hope I can just be one minuscule of that, because I loved her so much and I will always love her. My children loved her. My grandchildren loved her. She would come over when they would be there and play with them. And she was just like family to everybody. So when they found out that she passed, we were all grieving together.
We're going to get through this together. Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. A couple more? Right behind you.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm one of Aunt Teresa's nephews. I've known Aunt Teresa since 1998 when I contacted my birth family. I was, for many of you, Aunt Pat's son. I think back to the time when my wife Marge and I were in Claremont for several years, and Aunt Teresa was part of our weekly card playing group. We played hand and foot, and I can tell you she won a fair share of her games. She is mentally sharp, and she was definitely one of the life of the party. There were several of our group wanted to be here, but there were some health issues that intervened for them. But the time that we and Aunt Theresa were in Claremont were very special to us. She became very close to my wife, Marge, as well as to me. Whenever we were out of state, living in Michigan or now in Idaho, we would always make time to visit Aunt Theresa, and that was always one of the highlights of our trip. One of the great gifts that Aunt Theresa gave me is when you're adopted, you always wonder why your parents gave you up. She was present the day I was born, and she helped convince my mom to give me up. Those of you who know the circumstances, they were two kids on their own living at the YMCA. My maternal grandmother wasn't in any position to be a surrogate parent. It was indeed the best decision, and Aunt Theresa was instrumental in helping Aunt Pat, your Aunt Pat, make that decision. So I would say that she was probably, other than my mother, the second most influential person in setting the direction of the life. But she let me know what a heart-wrenching decision it was, not only then, but for years afterwards. And it answered a question that had always tugged at my heart. And that was one of the tremendously good things that she did for me. But I would only, Marge and I would only second her optimism, her love of family, all of those wonderful qualities that you mentioned we saw in abundance as well.
Thank you, sir. We have time for one more? Oh, right up here, Diana, in front.
I'm Theresa's daughter-in-law, Diana McGarry, and although I can tell you hundreds of stories, I just wanted to share something that really impacted me. She went to go live at Brookdale on November 4th, and we didn't hear a lot about any kind of friendship she was making or any kind of activity she was doing. In fact, we were kind of worried that she wasn't adjusting, because I would look at their social media and I'm like, she's not in the pictures and she's not going to any events. And my husband was hearing maybe some of her woes. So we didn't hear a lot of the positives, but when we went to go clear out her room, I voiced my concerns to the lady there, and she told me, "Oh no, she went to everything. She was there." And then she let us know that another person there in another room wanted to speak to us. So we went to go speak to this lady named Mary, and she was in tears, and she told us that Theresa was the best friend she ever had. And she was so overcome with emotion and so sad that she had passed, and she said, "I've never had a friend like her, and I never will have another friend like her." And I thought, what a short time to make such a big impact on somebody's life. It really touched me that she had such a good friend, and I see she had other friends there too. And another thing that tickled me was when we were, I again was telling her how the worker there, how I was afraid she wasn't going to anything, and she said, "Oh, she went to Logan's Candies just on Friday," and she had passed on the following Tuesday. And I said, "Oh, we didn't know she went." And she let us know that she wasn't really supposed to go because she had gone on the last outing, and they didn't have enough room, so they kind of have to take turns. But she looked at the event coordinator with the puppy dog eyes, so she drove her in her personal car to Logan's Candies. So that was her last outing.
Thanks, Anna. I know a lot of you may want to share as well, and that's what the reception is for. Please continue to share your memories like this. Thank you for everyone who shared. As we've had these great memories, let's take a look at some memories. So would you watch up at the screen? What a life. I want to just share with you for a couple minutes about what's going on here. A lot of us will pose a nagging question: why would God take someone from us that we love deeply? And like you, I have the same question, both for young and old. I don't know. And you might think, well, Mike, you're a pastor. Shouldn't you have that figured out by now? I mean, you've been doing this a while. I hear you. But what do we know for sure? As strange as it sounds, God designed this time that we go through. He designed us to go through a time of grief. And he's not uncaring when he did that. And he did it for several reasons. First of all, God designed it so that we can reveal our depth of love for the person that we've lost. And I believe we've done a really good job of that today, to show how much we love Theresa. And we're overwhelmed when loss occurs. But Jesus said in Matthew 5:4, he said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Now, that sounds silly, but it's true. Because behind our grieving lies a tenderness of heart and a profound depth of love. The deeper we love, the deeper we grieve. Now, we get that, but the opposite is true as well. We are not blessed if we can't mourn. I believe, in fact, we're deprived. If we fail to mourn, it's because we failed to love deeply. Jesus mourned for his friend Lazarus and shed tears for the family as they lost their loved one. Now, I'm not saying everyone who grieves has to cry like a baby. We all grieve differently. But there's a critical connection between grief and love. And too often, we want to rush past this time in our lives. And we just say things like, "Oh, honey, this will pass. You'll be okay. It's all right." But notice something. Jesus didn't say, "Blessed will be those who mourn." No, blessed are. There's a present dynamic here to grief that we can't overlook today. So you are blessed when you love deeply. And you, in turn, are a blessing when your depth of love is revealed to other people. And for those of you who have shared, you have revealed your depth of love. But then comes the promise, right? You will be comforted, which leads us to another reason God designed grief, so that you can draw near to him. And we need to do this because our emotions will well up inside of us. And I haven't had a chance to meet Theresa, but I'm tearing up as I'm seeing the pictures here and interacting with you. And there's tears, there's maybe anger, there's frustration, there's fear of the unknown, bewilderment, sadness, and even depression. And you know what? Those are normal. Those are expected as we grieve. But the Bible encourages us to share what's going on inside of us with the Lord. A modern translation of Psalm 77 says, "I yell out to my God, I yell with all my might, I yell at the top of my lungs. He listens." God loves us in spite of us not understanding what's going on, and he listens to our requests. So if you're searching for some answers, I encourage you to draw near to God. Because Jesus said, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you." That truth in Matthew 7 is not an empty promise. Hold on to that. And you can approach God because he knows what you're going through. Because God's also a father. And I cannot imagine what he must have gone through when he allowed his son, his only son, to die for the sins of mankind. And to be crucified in that way, to die in that horrible way, that shocking act of love allows us to have a relationship with God if we place our faith in Jesus, if we trust him with our lives. This gift of heaven that Theresa is experiencing now. And I don't know if she's seeing streets of gold, but I sure hope that's what it looks like. I really do. Because I look at that Bible and I think, oh my goodness, what joy awaits us there. But that's a choice that we make, that God will never force us to make. He'll never put your hand to the fire and say, "You will choose me." No, I give you a gift of life. Use it how you will. That's my gift to you. But boy, do I want you to choose me, because life with me is way better. This is why it's called the gospel. That's the churchy word for good news. It's good news when we trust in him. So wherever you're at on your faith journey, I would love to talk with you about how you move forward in that. Owen and I would be happy to share, as Owen did previously. about what it means to trust in Jesus with your life. So God does hear us. He wants us to draw close to him to hear his answer. And as the Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians 7, God encourages those who are discouraged. And honestly, he's a much better comforter than I can ever be. Next, God designed grief so that we can remember just how short this life really is. Now, the older I get, I'm pushing 60, it's going faster now. I don't know what it is. It's on speed. You're just moving past. Moses wrote in Psalm 90 that to God 1,000 years are as a passing day, as brief as a few night hours. 70 years are given to us. Some even live to 80. And wow, Theresa surpassed that. Amen? Yeah, more than a decade. And Moses continues, soon they disappear and we fly away. And you might think, well, that just sounds awfully depressing. But then he says something profound. Don't miss this. Lord, teach us to realize the brevity of life, the shortness of life, so that we may grow in wisdom. Oh. So part of this time that we go through in grieving actually makes us wise? Yeah, if we look to the Lord and allow him to use us. King Solomon echoed that in Ecclesiastes, and he encourages us to look at our lives right now and ask, okay, Lord, how am I going to use the time that I have left? And that leads to another reason that God designed grief, so that we might remember the example of life that Theresa gave us. And then take that to heart. One theme, over and over again, as Owen and I were talking about Theresa's life, kept coming. And my Army brother over here said the same thing. Joy. She was full of joy. She loved to laugh. She loved to have fun, and people were drawn to her. And today, when we find so much in our culture to be angry about, to be depressed about, to fret over and worry, her joyful attitude inspires us. Agreed? Yeah. And Theresa, another characteristic that we've heard, she was industrious. There wasn't a lazy bone in her body. And yes, cleanliness was next to godliness. That's not in the Bible, by the way. Yeah, it's a proverb. Okay, Francis Bacon apparently said it first. And then one of the Wesley brothers. But so this was a discipline. She was methodical. Tuesday was washing day and ironing day, and Saturday was cleaning day, and she had that down. But that also promoted one of her greatest traits, was her trustworthiness. Do you know in the Bible, God never says to trust anybody else? Nope, don't even trust the wife of your youth, Psalm says. What are we supposed to do in return? We're supposed to be trustworthy. So that somebody, if they were to place their trust in us, they could. That's her. She was that excellent employee, wherever she worked, from being that 15-year-old at the theater to selling tickets there, through jobs at Lucky, or learning the computer system. I guess she said at Kaiser she learned the computer system. She worked at Mattel in the evenings, the evening shift, so she could provide gifts. She didn't disappoint. Now, Theresa also was tenacious. There's a little bit of a temper there. When you ticked her off a little bit, she would fight back. And when you shared with me a great story of how she just berated this administrator at the school because your coach was an idiot. And that was great. Why? Because she would stand up for you no matter what. Now, that was being tenacious, but she was also kind. And that led to the most important trait that anyone could ever say out of us: love. Family, you shared how, she loved you and said you were the best grandchild ever. And everybody probably has that same story. Yeah, she drew you close. She modeled what family looked like. Husband first, then children, siblings, extremely proud of the grandkids, and Asher over here, great-grandchild, that surrogate grandmother to those of you without a family. And she lived a full life. And at the end, when her body gave out, there was nothing wrong with her heart, because she knew how to use it well. And then to close this morning, there's one final reason God designed grief. And I hope you take this with you. Because you've drawn close to God for his unmatched comfort, because you've looked at Theresa's life and examined it and said, wait, these are the things that I want to value and I want to pass on, God has given us an ability to go and do something that would honor her memory and to honor God with our actions. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 1 that God comes alongside us when we go through hard times. And before you know it, he brings us alongside someone else who's going through difficult times as well. So we can be there for that person just as God was there for us. So God can use us in this state of grief, in a time of weakness, to actually give strength to other people and then ultimately to ourselves. So God says when we go through this time of grieving, do something about it. Because if we go from here and we're selfish of our memories with Theresa, we won't honor her life. So I'd like to challenge you this morning. One of the things I teach at this church is that each one of us, God has given an oikos. Now, you may have gone to the store and seen the oikos yogurt or John Stamos advertising it. The word oikos means family or home. But most of the time in the Bible, it means your relational world. Who has God placed strategically, supernaturally in your sphere of influence that you can reach for him? How does God want us to do that? We have lots of examples from Jesus first, but then people like Theresa who've given their life to him, that we can emulate and do what they did. Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. Who is that one person in your oikos, in your sphere of influence that God has given you to reach for him today? This would be the perfect person to demonstrate that gift that Theresa gave you. Now, you can pick one, you can pick two, maybe one that we said, maybe just the one that you keep in your own heart. And you say, this one is one she gave to me. How will you use that for God's glory today? Now, don't wait on this, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. If there's someone that God is prompting you to reach, call them. Share that trait of Theresa with them today. Let's ask God to help us do that right now. Will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we see in your word, and I know it's also printed on the program here, that if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, the pinnacle of our Christian faith, that guarantees us a life after this one, even so you will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. And Lord, we have that confidence with Theresa today. And so as we gather here to remember her and what she means to each of us, Lord, I pray that we might be able to honor her in our lives and then bring glory not only to you, yes, we want to do that, but to those around us that need it, that need that smile, that need that joy, that need that love. And Lord, we want to thank you, Father, for the comfort that you bring us, that the 23rd Psalm says, when we walk through a dark valley, the shadow of death, we don't need to fear because you're always with us. So Lord, guide us and draw us near to you now in Jesus' name. Amen. Family, friends, thank you on behalf of the family for being with us this morning. So take a moment, greet one another, greet the family, and then head to the McGarry house for the reception. God bless each and every one of you.